Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, folks. Welcome to Karate Without Belts. I'm John.
I'm Jeremy.
Welcome, welcome, folks. We are back and in black, even though we're kind of a little afraid of the black vans coming to our houses. But Jeremy, how are things with you?
I'm just really busy. Had a series of setbacks with some injuries, but starting to get back to training again, so that's good. So
Good. Is high or low
higher
in
low
terms
what?
terms of the injuries? Upper body or lower body?
Just both. I I was at one of my sites and I jacked up my arm moving a bunch of equipment because I have to. I, I grabbed a battery backup device that was 130 pounds, and you're supposed to do it with something. You're supposed to have two-person. I didn't have a second person. Messed up my elbow a little bit, and then I had that hamstring issue for a couple of weeks, and that's just been slow and easy, slow and easy, slow and easy. So that's the way
Yeah,
it
when
is.
we
Get over it.
fart and get over it. We gotta
Fart,
put that
get
on.
over it.
You gotta put that on a t-shirt.
Hey, that's words to live by. I'll tell you what. That's my motto. Fart and get over it.
Indeed, indeed. I've actually had a last like 2 weeks ago. I had a pretty like just kind of like crater training week. This week, on the other hand, I think I've trained pretty much every day,
Well, that's cool.
which is you definitely see a difference in yourself when
Hmm.
you can actually do that or can actually get out doing that, which is really good. Yeah, we were just talking about kind of recent seminarings, both in person and virtual, which I think we're all looking forward to just the virtual seminars stopping altogether.
Yeah,
I know I certainly am.
I'm
So,
ready for my life to come back, not my virtual life to stay in. So,
oh yeah, I think that there's anything, I hope less people listen to the podcast. If more people are like gonna get out and go to a bar or just hang out or just vibe,
or
like
train,
yeah,
whatever.
just
Yeah.
train. Yeah, go out and train. Go punch somebody and have them punch you too. Maybe you'll be friends afterwards. Now, we don't condone violence on Karate Without Belts. I'm just saying that if we find a training partner for them to punch at you and for you to punch back at them, please do not go out and take this as an endorsement to go back out in the streets and start committing any sort of violence. We do not condone that on this podcast and will not be held responsible for anybody listening to this podcast to take this podcast as some call to violence.
I mean, speaking of that, I mean, we're not going to get it. I mean, no. I mean, did you hear about the guy in God, where was it? I think it was Hawaii. The guy who was a UFC or MMA fighter. I don't know if he's UFC or not, but he got sucker punched. He died earlier today.
I did not hear that. No.
I can't, it was I was reading the article. It was a couple hours ago. I was like, wow. I mean, I was just shocked. I mean, the guy got sucker punched and and I guess he was training partners with whoever the middleweight champion is. I can't even say the guy's name. I mean, no disrespect to the guy at all, but I mean, I can't say the guy's name. So,
Inexplicable sadness. MMA fighter Fall Vacay dies in Auckland City attack.
oh yeah, okay, no, it was yeah,
He is
I guess
in this New Zealand.
yeah, New Zealand. Yeah, I went. Sorry, one Hawaii. Sorry, all right.
I hope we're saying his name right. Fall Vic or Vacay.
Yeah,
25. Somebody passing away that young. Somebody passing away that young is just that is an absolute tragedy. Um,
yeah. I mean, I guess the guy was really promising too. I mean, I've never, I never really reviewed any of his fights or anything, but I mean, I just thought it was just really sad. Somebody went up and sucker punched the guy, and boom, you know.
that's why that's why we work on defense. I mean, for that type of stuff because we think because of sparring and stuff like that, even anybody who's experienced with that can still clearly do damage to the point where it can be fatal.
Yeah.
So even when you're talking about on a punch I don't think it was just even the sucker punch. I think it was just outright.
I thought I did read where somebody came up and sucker punched the guy like from behind and boom.
Yeah, well, and that's a big thing too, where it's. I think maybe we can spotlight that another day, but
yeah, no, I mean,
given a little more research, the story is still really developing, but
sorry,
no, that's it's a perfectly valid thing to bring up on this podcast, and thank you for bringing that to our attention, Jeremy. Our hearts go out to this guy's family. That's
absolutely. And all people are close to him, Jeez.
Yeah, because that's a gym's guy. Who was up to go, and that was somebody's training partner, and friend. It's tough.
Yeah. So, anyway.
Yeah. Well.
I mean, not to make light of it, but I mean, just. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
No. That's Well, let's shift gears a little, shall we, to dovetail into something else. So me and Jeremy were getting to talking a little before starting to record today. We were talking about kind of differences between now training and then training, and this got into the discussion of what our images were of training. And I think we can, even though this might be something, I don't want to say this is going to be another abstract episode. Not really, because I feel this affects everyone, because everyone's image of something is different. It's actually one of the easiest ways for me to communicate with people in Japan, because I live in Japan. An image is almost the exact same meaning. What is your image of something? あなたのイメージは何ですか? Soのこと is a very easy thing to say to people. I think what we're going to get into today is a little bit both of coming from what we imagine as something, but also what our image was kind of created in our head from our experiences. How these two things kind of mesh together, both based on the past and the present. So I think one thing I'd like to talk about starting out is kind of the aesthetic image of karate itself. Goes into a lot of best way we can talk about it is the ideal of going into a place and learning a new skill or getting this new batch of knowledge that doesn't require necessarily having this outward physical skill. I think that's a base a lot of people come at karate with in general. And I think for a lot of us, when we start, we have that image. And then whoever we go with completely shifts, validates, invalidates, or otherwise takes that image and runs with it. And I think that's something as anybody who's representing karate needs to keep in mind, is that we talk about when people have their image of something, where in any way, shape, or form we interact with them, we help shape that image. Even this this funny little program does that. So it's always view a culture, but then you're also interacting with the culture. You can't view it from completely not interacting with it. Same thing with people. You can't not change their image of something without interacting with them. It's kind of maybe give a flat baseline for this discussion.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I first started into this, I mean, it was before the internet. It was before, it's kind of hard to think anything's before the internet, but I mean, you really couldn't do a whole lot of research. You just went in places and just started talking to people, and I was fortunate whenever I went in, I was extremely ignorant, stupid about any of this. I was like, yeah, that'd be cool to do. You know, I saw it on a movie. That'd be pretty cool. You know, I mean, that's kind of how that was kind of my introduction. You know, John Claude, Steven Seagal, you know, Chuck Norris, Jeff Speakman. You know, all those guys. You know, Karate Kid. All that was kind of like, yeah, that'd be kind of cool to do. Um, and there was a lot of, I guess, I wouldn't say mysticism, but in a way there was. Okay, what are you actually doing? What is it that's actually going on? You know, now you've got, you know, YouTube lessons and Zoom seminars and whatever else. I mean, you can get knowledge from many different places very, very quickly, but may not be totally hands on.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge in this generation right now, as opposed to when we started, was that you're ending up with a lot of people having almost a complete opposite experience that you're talking about. Because other than like, I don't want to say big media, but like very general media that you don't in any way interact with, other than just being a passive viewer and consumer, right?
Yeah.
Now we're in every way geared to consume and interact and interlope with this information, but it's almost like inappropriate input.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. It's like it's just either too much or skewed in this like one way, and it only through a screen. You know, there's a bigger, and we talked about this with our keyboard warriors chat, but you know, it's a huge difference between literally being in the presence of someone versus viewing what they have got to say on a screen, whether it's a video chat or just a video.
Well, not only that, but I mean, when I first started, video cameras were pretty expensive. They weren't on your phone. They weren't. I mean, when I started, the only cell phones were those big bag phones and stuff. I mean, not very many people had them. So you had to experience a lot of this stuff. Today, it's like, oh, well, I want to get a video of this. I want to get a video of that without actually experiencing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the big ways how things have changed. People look at it as if a video is your knowledge as opposed to the actual experience itself.
It's like the representation of the image is going to be different than the image itself, whereas like having the picture is the thing rather than the thing itself.
Yeah.
So you're always looking at the sunset, but you're never experiencing it.
Yeah.
You see the hit on the screen, but you never actually get hit.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of like I was watching some clips from movie Good Will Hunting. Not the whole thing, but there's a part when Robin Williams is sitting down there with Matt Damon, and he's talking about. He goes, "You can probably tell me everything there is to know about the Sistine Chapel, but have you ever been in the Sistine Chapel to actually smell it? Have you ever done this? Have you ever experienced it? It's the difference between experiential knowledge as opposed to just knowledge."
Yeah, and I think it's what's going to be interesting, because a lot of what we tend to do is like kind of, you know, last time we did a kind of talk back on stories and stuff. What I think is kind of interesting to kind of dreamcast a little about what the future of this is going to be like, because we had our experiences with walking into places and having some like kind of general understanding from media, but ultimately, you know, walking into a place and experiencing it and just kind of feeling that difference. Now, with the generation coming up, with all of this information and stuff, what is their image of it? Like, you're already going to have people who can walk in and just wiki everything, right? They can literally call out everything.
Mm-hmm.
that you do. And a lot of people, how online you are almost gives people that like leg up on you.
I mean, in some ways, yes. In some ways, no. I mean, in some ways, yeah, that's a leg up, but in some ways, it's also a weakness.
How so?
Because if you're spending that much time online, you're not experiencing squat,
True.
and you're not really truly getting it. Now, one other thing I've noticed with just some classes that I've gone to lately, I don't think it's instructors' faults or anything like that, but I've noticed a lot of people who participate now, like when the instructor tells them to do something, the student will not just do it. It's more like, how many times do I have to do this? Like, I want to get by with the minimal amount of effort to do things, as opposed to go do this until I tell you otherwise. I mean, it's a different mindset.
Well, I don't think that mindset's necessarily generational. I think but I think that mindset of just do the thing because people are used to having their attention grabbed as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to just sit and do,
Mm-hmm.
right? For turn off the clock in your brain
Mm-hmm.
and just because in reality, how long would you ask anyone to really do something? More than like 20 minutes, half an hour, maybe, right? Maybe you want to do it for longer to kind of just be a stress test on that, or to kind
Until
of,
you get it.
yeah,
Until
or
you
until
get it.
yeah. But I mean, that's where I feel where people are getting. I don't want to say subconsciously programmed. I don't want to get into any. Oh my
You know,
God, we're getting into
no,
the internet's destroying our minds. Stop
no.
listening to this podcast. But it's just more we're becoming wired to time stuff out more that way, and so our images we're now even getting to the point where like, okay, I'm going to go to this class for XYZ number of time, we're only going to do this for XYZ number of time, and my image of karate, both from kind of how I absorbed it, I absorbed it a little different than you. I absorbed it kind of through anime, and I also absorbed it from the other aesthetics. What built in my head was just karate creates time. Yeah, you have that hour, but how you experience that hour is just much long. For me, was always much longer. It just felt like, and I'm just talking about a feeling. I'm just talking about something. The way we don't really talk about this. The way karate can like make you feel is that the image in my head is just, oh, I can go do this thing, and then it creates that time. It makes that time for me. All those other things just melt away or go away. And that's where I feel my aesthetic with it is, and where my image of it was and kind of always will be in my head even as time goes on. And kind of the image I try to fight for people, like when I teach. Just like, don't worry about it. We're going to be here for this amount of time. I'm guilty of worrying about time too, but I mean, there's difference between having to be conscious of something and just kind of letting something happen. If any of that makes sense.
No, oh yeah, no. I mean, I remember, I'd have my normal, back when I was training really, really hard, I would say, I had my days where I'd have my class times of an hour, hour and a half, whatever. That was one thing. But then I'd have my days where I'd have 6 or 7 hours. Now I had to do a couple other things, but I would set time aside just to try to figure something out, do whatever it took to figure something out, at least within a certain stage. But I like what one of my friends has mentioned it as of today. I mean, as of recent, I guess. You have certain people that see it as a lifestyle, a journey, things like that. You have some people that see it as a social activity, just like going to the gym. It's like the people that are going to the gym seem to be more prevalent than making a lifestyle or a journey today.
Yeah, and I feel that goes into image because I feel that because the image that's portrayed to people, right? The
Yeah.
gym image, like going to the gym, like that kind of image, is a much different feel. Like I'm going karate Tuesdays and Thursdays. Going karate from 7:30 to 8:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. No, I think on his face of it, I think anyone would just look at you and be like, yeah, it's at the gym Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7:30 to 8:30. What's your problem?
Yeah.
But we view that as what? Like it's just kind of like, yeah, it's what a soccer mom does. Why would we want that's not our karate life.
Well, I mean, when you're getting started, that's one thing. And I get it. You're putting your foot in the pool, see if you want to jump in or not. I get it. But it does make it frustrating whenever somebody who is doing this for life or as a journey, however you want to call it, tries to teach somebody who is I've got 30 minutes in the gym, just dump all your knowledge on me. It's just kind of like because once they leave, they're not going to think about it again until they come back. And that's a reality. I mean, that's the reality.
I mean, that's a frustration, but it's also you want that person to have your image, right? You want that person to, because what does image come from? It comes from curiosity. It comes from that desire to know, that desire to, because a lot of our knowledge comes from us projecting something, right? We project like this. Oh, we want this. We think it's going to be this. We think it's going to be. It's predictive in a lot of ways. And then once we kind of go on that journey, we create the journey before we go on it. Especially from if you're that person who's teaching at that theoretical gym from like 7:30 to 8:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you have that image in your head, but you can't portray that to other people, I think that's probably one of the most frustrating things.
Well, I mean, one of the things I know, one of the people I've taught in the past, one of the things that they did was they would come up and they would say, I don't feel like I can really use this. And this person had been training 5 or 6 years. And I'm like, and they didn't like it whenever I mentioned, I'm like, well, what are you doing with it? Is this like a social activity, or are you wanting to get better, or you just don't care? And of course they're offended, but I don't care. I mean, I'm trying to pour stuff to them, and they're just like, they don't care, or it's not in their reality to care. And I really felt like that person there was failure on so many levels for that person, because they had a very good grasp of the memory of all the stuff that was going on, and they did, but they couldn't get intentional with it to make it work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I feel that's also a matter of that person saw you as the person who's going to give that to them.
Yeah.
Right. And you can't give somebody martial arts. Like, it's just impossible to do that. And I think that it's become then to create that aesthetic to get there to a degree. So it's like you create an environment where you can show somebody this is X. You're at probably at A right now, or this is Z. You're at A right now. Here's ways to get to Z. You don't have to put everything out on the front door, because that's just too much at once. But getting to Z is going to take some time, and you have to put in X amount of effort. But I mean, and I think some people nowadays, because especially they see it in that social situation, rather than they see it as a journey, or what I feel a lot of us started with is this mystery, right?
Yeah.
So in a weird way, our attempts to demystify or decodify or make something more palatable or accessible it has done the thing that we all fear, but in the way that we didn't really realize what it was doing. Is that it's not watering down the content of the art, it's watering down people's experience and expectation, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd also say watering down their results too.
Yeah, because I mean, if you taught them everything or if you taught them like the stuff and they're doing a version of that, then they're doing everything you said.
Well, I go back to what my basketball coach used to yell at us about. And he'd always say, how you practice is how you're going to play the game. How you train is how you're going to use it. If you train with intentionality of actually having some intention behind it, then you're going to be able to use it in in a case of danger. I mean, you're going to be more likely to be able to use it in a case of danger than if you just go through the motions.
No, 100%. And I think that also comes to like, but it goes back to image to a degree, because you have that image of you got to train the way you fight, you got to fight the way you train, you got to you got to be ready for the intentionality of the situation. You've got that in your head in one way.
Yeah.
And those people who come to your class, Bob, Jim, and Mary will all have different understandings of that. Or to be woke, you say Akeem and Ja Rule.
Yeah.
Sure, why not? Whatever.
Why not? I mean,
why not have them all in the same class? Whatever.
I think about another experience, and maybe I've shared this on here. Well, I'll never forget. We're going through this basic exercise, and it's a timed exercise. I know I've told you. I don't know if you mentioned this on the podcast or not. But so all of us, all instructors, are in the training area, and we're just standing there and stuff. And so we're going right down one, to see if we can make it within time. And I'm watching all these people, all these instructors. I'm obviously not calling anybody out, but at the time when we were doing this, it was as if they were doing it like in a summer breeze next to a willow tree by a brook, and everything is just fine. I mean, it was just like 1, 2. I mean, it was so, there was absolutely no energy into it. And what's interesting is none of these people had seen me do this exercise for time. So when it was my turn, I'll never forget this, because it was like, they're asking me if I'm ready. I mean, I'm ready to just blow up. And I mean, I'm literally shaking because I'm ready to just go as soon as they say go. And everybody's just looking at me like, is he going to pass out? What's going on? I mean, just, they could tell I'm shaking and ready to go. And I mean, basically just all out intensity. And what's funny is when we're leaving, we're out in the parking lot. I had 3 of my fellow instructors come up to me, and they're like, I've never been scared of somebody just doing a basic exercise. And they said, after that, I am never jacking with you, ever. And I was blown away.
Their image of you changed forever.
A little bit, yeah.
That gets to the heart of it, because you have people in their heads, they're doing it one way, and I think maybe in their heads they thought, hey, I'm doing this right, I'm doing this the way it needs to be done, and they see you and they're like, what that's intentionality? That's his version of intentionality? That's not my image of intentionality. No. And I think that's where people get frustrated or even threatened to a degree, because perception is reality to that regard, so it just breaks the reality completely. Sure. And where some people who are like more open to that and have a little more honest view, I don't want to say honest view of things, because everyone's got a different view, but a more open view of to be changed and to grow, when they get in rooted in what they think is correct or right, even when it comes to things like intentionality and they see something different, they get scared. They don't understand it. And then ultimately, I think this is where it gets into, I don't want to shift gears on you, but where it gets into people feeling something gets changed because they have an image of something, because they grew to be attached to that one thing. Like if you're doing a form a certain way, or if you're training a certain way, and they've done that forever and a day, you're suddenly now trying to change their image of it. Their world is now gone to a degree. It's not to get over dramatic.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, it breaks their reality, absolutely. Yeah.
So I guess one thing we can spin this to is like, how would you in your head say, things change over time and people's image of things change. How do we best preserve the baseline of the image? the baseline of what's in our head or what we feel is right, while also allowing that picture to change over time. Keeping what's good, but allowing learning and growth to change what's there. Because I feel that that's probably the struggle a lot of people have.
I don't know. For me, I think it's more stay true to the principles that you know. Don't try keep your principles to what you know. Always be willing to explore new things, but don't let it interfere with what your experiences already are. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Add those explorations to your experience. Don't throw your experiences out the door. And I mean, maybe that sounds kind of simplistic, but as far as overall, I don't think there's any real way to further it other than that.
Yeah.
Because and I think in some ways that kind of teaching's going by the wayside. I really do. I hope I'm wrong, but I think that it is.
It's tough. It's not an easy thing to do because you get the group of people who will be willing to just shift the image up, and so the only constant is change.
Well, that you also have people's, as you mentioned, their reality, and their reality is some of them are, yeah, we'll do this. Other people's reality is, I just want to do what's good enough to make me feel good.
Yeah.
And so that's a tough nut to crack, and it is.
Well, and I think that might be really good for, I don't want to say good for another time, but would be a good discussion in its own to say how do you get people to be uncomfortable without being unsafe? There's.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to go on a little bit more on that, I mean, you got to be a little unsafe on it.
To a degree, like to the degree where you're gonna make somebody feel uncomfortable. Like you have to get into that zone.
Well,
where the image breaks, the reality changes, and then just.
Well, for me, I tend to lean on the side of just ticking people off. So I mean, sorry.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right. It's difficult to get to that point with people, but I think if you can make it in continuity, if that makes sense, that change is congruent with what they know.
Well, and I think there also has to be a level of trust.
Right.
There has to be a level of trust. If there's not that trust, then yeah, all you're really going to do is tick them off and let them run away 99 times out of 100. They're not going to come back and confront. They're going to run away. But if there is that level of trust, you will build a much better relationship for your being able to teach that student. So
yeah, and I feel that's the image we need to portray to our students, or to really anybody, is that they're like, when you try to tell people, okay, you have this image of this thing. I don't really buy into some parts of that, but there's some parts of that I think are really, really important.
Yeah.
This is how I function. This is the image I'm creating, which can completely break mold for a lot of people, and then make people feel uncomfortable and make them walk away. But I feel if you're committed to that, both from an aesthetic point of view and from a training point of view, then I think you'll be successful. But yeah. I know that sounds vague.
Well, I think the other thing is there's got to be a level of patience, and give yourself leeway to screw up. You're never. I mean, you're going to learn more from your mistakes than you are from your successes. I guarantee you. Trust me, I've learned a lot from my screw ups. So it's and it's interesting. I'm brought back to an old saying that I think it's funny. I'm bringing up basketball stories now all of a sudden, but my old basketball coach, when we play, we get in a hurry and just go nuts. And, he'd always tell us a story, and I'll clean it up a little bit. And I think it's worthwhile. And you got two bees, an old bee and a young bee. They're flying over this field of clover. And young bee is impatient, tells the old bee, hey, let's just buzz down there and just, pollinate some flowers, and let's, head back, whatever. The old bee says, son, you got a lot to learn. We're going to take our time. We're going to pollinate it all. And so therefore, sometimes a little bit of wisdom would just take your time, get what there is to get, and really get that journey and that experience, and it's worthwhile overall. So
I feel the more we kind of give that image, we put that image out there, I think the more people get it. And even in this current generation where people are getting more of their experiences from media, are getting more of their experience digitally, if we can encourage that journey and encourage that, I think we'll end up with a better result. It won't be the same as what the past was, but and again, that's only our image of the past.
sure. I mean, in some ways it may be better. I mean, but in some ways, in some ways, until you're able to experience that intentionality and that experience, it's not. It never will be.
No. So. Cool. So Jeremy, what other than PTing both your elbow and your hamstring, what do you got on deck for training?
This week is basically getting my schedule back to where I can train, get back to setting up just a schedule of exactly what I'm going to be training on. So, like, I think what I'm looking at is, okay, these exercises on these days, these kata on these days, and really get more into more of a schedule now that I'm pretty much healed now. So elbow's still a little messed up, so I'll probably go a little light, but I can get over it. So
yeah, I think this week I'm going for trying to there's some stuff from our friends and different karate media stuff that showed me a couple of things. One like Nahachi squat type deal that I want to work a little bit more on, and a couple other things with Kobudo that I'm going to experiment on and maybe throw up a couple of videos with. But we'll see, time and effort, assuming. But cool. Anything else you want to say to the audience before we get out of here?
Nope, I think that's it. It's all good.
Cool. Well, folks, thanks for listening, and don't forget to keep training.
You just go through the motions.
Seven times a day.
Mm.
It's like 1984.